Anyway, moving on from that, if it wasn't that, if there was no orgy of spending, what caused this problem? Let's get to the banks. This is where I feel good. This is a very important graph. These are bond yields. This is the interest rate you pay in a 10-year bond for all of the countries that ended up joining the euro, more or less, with a few like Slovenia and Slovakia thrown in for good measure. And basically what it shows you is before the euro came in, you priced bonds differently. Why? Because the Germans will never default, where it is entirely possible that the Greeks might. So when you're getting paid 25% for holding a Greek 10-year, you've basically got a 1 in 4 chance that the bond can go bad. That's what the 25% effectively means. But look, the Italians, the French, I mean, it's not as if France is going to default, but yet you were getting paid 12%. Now, I'm a banker, right? Imagine I'm a banker. I'm getting paid 12% for holding an asset that's guaranteed by the French taxpayer. Well, I mean, I can't get 2% on a checking account now, for Christ's sake. I mean, this is fantastic, right? So this is a source of easy profits. Now, there's two stories you can tell about this, and here's the one that economists and political scientists like to tell themselves, because it sounds really cool and it's not true. And it goes like this. Well, obviously, the important thing is in 1992, the Europeans come together and sign the Maastricht Treaty. And this is the beginning of European monetary union, so they bring in the euro, the common currency. Now, when you've got all these countries in the eurozone, and some of them, frankly, can't be trusted with their own things like money, well, you know, there's an exchange rate problem, because the Italians are serial devaluers. Rather than be as competitive as the Germans, they'll just do a devaluation, and it's so zero-sum against stuff, and it's expensive, and it increases Italian inflation through imports, and it cheapens real wages, and it's just bad, so they shouldn't do it. And of course, well, you know, inflation is a terrible thing, and you know, if you give them their own printing presses, so you have to kind of get rid of it. And the wonderful thing about Maastricht is we took the printing presses away from all those naughty politicians. And we didn't just lock them up in a cupboard in Germany. No, we went far better. We built the most conservative central bank the world has ever thought of. And we staffed it with the most conservative German central bankers we could find. In fact, we even found a Frenchman who was more German than the Germans to run it, called Jean-Claude. And they have one target, the inflation rate, and they have one policy tool, the interest rate. So they're basically what's called a currency board with an inflation target. They're not really a central bank, and that becomes really important a little while on. So the story we like to tell ourselves is, once everybody figures out the Germans are going to run this stuff, right, all the bond yields start to converge, because ultimately what you're doing is you're taking the risk of devaluation out of the price of the bond, and you're taking the risk of inflation out of the price of the bond, so basically everybody becomes Germany, right? But it's manifest nonsense that everybody's become Germany. This obviously isn't true, right? But what's happened is the yields have converged. Now, why would those yields converge? It doesn't make any sense, right? Why would you forgo easy profits just because 9 years from now an institution which hasn't been built yet might come into existence? This is a bit nuts if you think about it. So let's try another story. I'm a big French bank, and I see all those easy profits up there, and I know the euro's coming in, and I say to myself, this is going to be a bit of a bummer for me. Oh, why is that, Jean-Claude? Well, because I won't be able to buy those Greek debts anymore. Well, you will, yeah, but they're going to be a lot cheaper. What do you mean? Well, I won't get the interest rate, and the bonds are going to be more expensive. So why is that going to happen? Well, you see, all the other banks will buy them. What do you mean? Well, look, if I know that it's going to be a declining spread, I want to get in first. But so does every other bank. So what happens if we all buy the assets at once? The price goes up and the yield goes down. There's your convergence. Ah, but of course I'm a derivatives trader. I know how to make money out of this stuff. Really? How do you do that? Well, our bank sits on a capital cushion, and that capital cushion is the stuff that we're meant to be able to sell at any moment, even in a crisis, and it's going to stop your pensions going bang, right? Okay, great. Now, currently, we've got all this stuff like Dutch debt and British debt and, you know, good solid debt from the Germans. And how about we just get rid of all that? And basically, we swap it out for as much Greek stuff as we can possibly get. Because that way, we're buying when it's expensive, but we're buying it cheap. And we're doing it at the same time. It's called a volume convergence trade. Now, why is it a volume convergence trade? Because I'm going to take the balance sheet of the bank and I'm going to borrow as much money as I can spell. I'm going to make the balance sheet of my bank 2, 3, 4, 10 times what it was before, so that I amplify the direction of this bet as I'm buying this stuff. So I bloat the size of my bank. I become multiples of the GDP of the underlying sovereign that's meant to bail me out. And this is why it becomes a moral hazard trade, folks. Because I know that 6 years from now, my sovereign's about to give up their printing press. And if I become 3 times the size of the underlying economy, I'm a systemic risk. And if I'm a systemic risk, what's the phrase? I'm too big to fail. So somebody's going to have to bail me out. But you say, maintenant, no. Because the French sovereign will have no printing press. So they will not be able to bail you out. So you cannot play this game. And the banks looked at each other and said, but that nice new ECB will, won't they? Because if we all get so big that we threaten the solvency of the entire banking sector of Europe, not that I'm saying we would, but if it came to pass, clearly somebody would have to bail us out. Which story do you think's true?